I'm sorry that the term militia arose in this meeting. I just want to tell you this. There's a law that said everyone is part of the Montana militia. And the event, which was referenced a few years back, had a beginning that should disturb every last one of us. There was a gentleman in Bozeman who had a mail order contract with the government. The IRS came in, confiscated his records, and probably most of you don't know the rest of the story, but he combined efforts with some other people who had been harassed by federal agencies. They became known as a Freeman. They finally retreated to a compound outside of Roundup. Several of us legislators were called in to meet with those people in leadership positions. Because we met with them, because we listened to their concerns, our names were bandied across the country. I was accused of seeing black helicopters that didn't exist. Today, in the Montana Senate, if we were convened, if a chopper were heard taking off from the airport in Helena, they'd say, "Hear that, Curtis?" You know what I did? I sponsored legislation that said that any time federal agencies came into a county, they should notify the sheriff of that county of their presence. Because our county sheriffs are the highest officers in the land. And it's really disturbing when we have a public meeting such as this and a sheriff doesn't respond. It's really disturbing when Ginny Emerson calls a sheriff to report something untoward going on in our community. They should at least have the respect to call back, regardless of what they intend to tell you. And I think that that's one thing that this organization should do is, as a group, demand more accountability from the people that we elect. I'll tell you a little bit more about the Freeman. After that incident was over, they made a deal with a person who later became Lieutenant Governor of Montana. He said he'd take over their records, he'd protect them and take care of them, for them, make them safe. Guess what? All their records went. But you know what? The very next session of the legislature, we had a bill before us to change the Universal Commercial Code. The bill was that thick. We had a week to look at it, and it passed without a whimper. I think 3 of us voted against us. I think only 3 of us. We need to stand up for our rights. We can't do it as individuals. Because when I get to Helena and do something like I'm going to do when the legislature convenes again, to repeal that bill that had to do with nursery people, where Ginny Emerson has to pay $1,000 or whatever that license fee is if she sells some extra plants from her greenhouse. Unless someone comes there to show up and say, hey, this is affecting us adversely, I'm the Lone Ranger, folks. And this has happened in the past, it'll probably happen again. But the Human Rights Network has ridiculed me continually because of the Freeman incident. I circulated a petition. I had, as I recall, every member of the Montana House of Representatives sign that petition, which would have granted amnesty to those people, the Freeman, who were over there on that compound afraid to come out. The idea was not that I supported what they were doing. The reason I drafted that petition was to give them an opportunity to come to Helena and testify before the governor and the attorney general or whoever else would take the time to listen to see what the problem was. And believe me, there was a problem. And I'll tell you what I think the problem was. I think that some of those freemen, not all, but some of them, are doing exactly what the Federal Reserve is doing, creating money out of nothing. Creating money out of nothing. And I'll tell you another thing. Right now, one of the biggest items where our national debt is concerned is, guess what? Interest that we owe the Federal Reserve for coining money out of nothing and letting us use it. Now that is not right. When I ran for U.S. Senate in 1980, that was the issue that lost me the nomination, the Republican nomination. Because there are a lot of bankers who think the Federal Reserve is just fine. They don't go into it. But there's a fellow on Whidbey Island who's pioneered for years. And he had a real sympathizer in Ron Paul, that the Federal Reserve is just an offshoot and the result of Congress abrogating its authority to control a currency in the United States of America. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It's an independent banking organization, and its aims and its role that's being played in the world, among the world powers and among the world bankers is what we're facing right now, the outcome. So a lot of people have been talking for a long time to try to bring this country to its senses, but it hasn't been happening. So all I can say is that we have to stand together. We have to know what we see. We have to document what we see. And as a group and as a community, we'll be able to get something done. But one person alone can't.